So the first question asks, what do you need to be given in order to do stoichiometry? Stoichiometry being what we did last class, where we turned one substance into a different substance. We were calculating how our reactants and products related to each other. So if you're going to do that, what does the problem have to give you? What do you need from the problem before you can do anything else? Like all the practice problems we did last class, what did all those problems give you so that you could start? Nothing? You guys just spent 12 minutes on it and nobody has any answers? Why don't you go look at the practice PDF? Look at some of the problems we did last class. What do all the problems as written in the PDF have in common that they are giving you? What kind of information do they offer you? Because there's really two things you need. Luke?
The formula and how many moles are going into the reaction.
Yeah, you need the formulas or the reaction itself that's happening. And you need how many moles, or at least an amount of something that's being used. Okay, so then it asks, what do you need to be able to figure out in order to do the stoichiometry? There's something about the reaction that you have to be able to figure out. Sometimes they give it to you and sometimes they don't. And Luke mentioned the formulas in the reaction. Sometimes they give you the reaction in words and you have to write the formulas. There's something else about the reaction that you can't do the calculation if it's not true. The reaction has to be balanced. Yeah. And then as far as the actual math goes, there's something else you have to be able to figure out. When you're actually calculating, you have to be able to figure out something as far as the math. What are they actually asking you to do? Like in stoichiometry, what was the point? What are they asking you to do? What are they asking you to figure out? Again, look at those problems in your PDF. What's the actual question part in all of those? What do they want from you? Moles, or some of the other problems we did at the end of class after we went past moles and also did mass. So basically, moles or mass, an amount, usually in moles or mass, of some unknown. I guess you could say this thing being used up here, we could call that unknown as well. Okay. Last class we did several types of problems and they gave us different units. Sometimes they gave us moles and sometimes they gave us grams. But no matter what they gave us, or what we started with, moles or grams, what we ended with, moles or grams, because we did some problems with both, where we started with moles or we started with grams. We did some problems where we ended with moles or we ended with grams. But no matter what, there was always one type of conversion that had to show up. There was always one thing that had to be in the math every time. the mole ratio, which you figured out from what? From the coefficients and the reaction. Thank you, Simran. We called that the mole bridge, using the mole bridge to help us find the coefficients. So the mole ratio always looked like some number of moles of like something and some number of moles of a different species, a different chemical. Okay, so far, we've only worked with grams and moles. All the problems we did only used grams and moles. So what would be different about the problems that we did last class if instead of grams, they asked about molecules or atoms? When we used grams to convert, we had to change grams to moles. Or moles to grams. With what? How do you change grams and moles? What do you need? Like, numerically. Where do you get a number that helps you change back and forth between grams and moles? Like, where would you look up a number of grams? On the periodic table, the molar mass. So that's what we already did. But this question's asking, what if instead of using grams, you're using particles? Like atoms or molecules? Take a second, talk with your neighbor. What would be different if you were going back and forth from like atoms to moles instead? What would be different about your math? What would you use instead of molar mass? What would you use instead of molar mass if you were changing back and forth between atoms and moles or molecules and moles? Instead of the periodic table, numerically, what would you use? Avogadro's number. Thank you, Josh. Okay, so far, all the problems we worked have only used one species changing units. We either started with moles of one thing, converted to another species, and then converted to grams, or we did the opposite. So this is asking, what would you do if you had to start and end with grams of two different species? So far, what we've done is either like moles of A, changing to moles of B, and then grams of B. Or we've done grams of A, changing to moles of A, changing to moles of B. That's all we've done so far. So what if the question instead asked you to go from grams of A to grams of B? What would those steps in the middle be? What would you have to do in the middle? You'd have to go from grams of A to moles of A. And then once you have moles of A, then you can go to moles of B. Then you can go to grams of B. I don't know if you know this, but if you type hyphen hyphen greater than, it'll type an arrow for you in your Google Doc. Hyphen, hyphen, greater, and then a space. It'll type an arrow for you. Did none of you guys know that? It'll work the other way. If you do less than hyphen, hyphen, space, you'll get an arrow going the other direction. How do you not know all these keyboard shortcuts?
This is the coolest thing I've ever known.
You're welcome. Do what? I don't know if Google Docs will do a double-sided. No, I don't think so. Okay, so with this in mind, we're going to switch to your spiral and your practice PDF.